Recording in progress.
Good evening. My name is John Matola, Vice Chair of the Board of Finance and the Chair of the Board of Finance Audit Subcommittee. This is a Board of Finance Audit Subcommittee special meeting. Today is Tuesday, January 7th, 6 p.m. It's 2025, although the agenda says 2024. 25, and I want to welcome everybody to the meeting. This is an organizational meeting. I also want to welcome Tom Harris, our new CFO. Welcome, Mr. Harris. Look forward to working with you. That's item number one. Item number two is to hear and consider and approve 2025 officers. Are there any nominations?
Yes, I will make a motion to nominate John Matola as chair of the committee for this year, Mary LeClaire as vice chair, and myself, Lori Charlton, as secretary.
Second it. That we can vote all these together if everyone's okay.
Yeah.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for support. Item number three is to hear and consider and approve 2025 schedule. So I will email Jen Carpenter to get the schedule on the website. Our dates for our regular audit subcommittee meetings will be April 22nd, 6 p.m., June 3rd, 6 p.m., September 16th, 6 p.m., and December 2nd, 6 p.m. And of course, if we want to add a meeting over the next year, we can do that. It'll be a special meeting, but those are the dates of our regular meeting. So I'll entertain a motion to approve that schedule.
So moved.
Seconded by Ms. Claire. All in favor? Aye. All right. Item number four, to hear an update from internal auditor Connie Saxel regarding new completed audits, update on progress of recommendations from the 2024 audits. We have a lot to get through tonight, so let's get through them. I'm going to turn it over to Connie.
Thank you.
Take us through the nuts and bolts of these audits, and I want to try to stop around 7:15 prior to our regular Board of Finance meeting. So let's try to get through this.
Thank you, John. Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. As you can see, 2024 was a very productive year for internal audits. 15 internal audit reports were stamped final and distributed to management during the calendar year. Tonight, I'll recap 11 internal audit reports as time permits that were not addressed at our previous meeting. I just wanted to let you know that our first selectman, Mr. Gerber, has also taken an active role in internal audit activities. And he has established monthly internal audit group meetings where the CFO, controller, chief of staff, department head, and myself discuss the audit findings and recommendations made within recently completed audit reports. We discuss action plans to address recommendations made within each report. And I recently commenced attaching a department head response to the back of each audit report, which requires the department head to include a course of action planned to address each audit finding and recommendation made within the report, along with the anticipated date of completion for these recommendations. Okay, I realize there's a lot of information in these reports. I will recap the most important issues addressed in each one, and also please feel free to ask questions. First audit, fire department in lieu of holiday pay. Total in lieu of holiday pay for FY24 was a little over $107,000. The purpose of the audit was to verify that the correct employees received in holiday pay for the correct number of holidays and submitted to them in writing to the fire chief, and to verify that they were paid the correct hourly rates of pay in accordance with union contractual requirements. Finding: no errors or exceptions were noted in audit testing. The June 6, 2024 in lieu of holiday pay under audit examination for the fire department was correct. Do you have any questions on that?
That's a good one.
That was a good one, John. We should break open the champagne.
I read this yesterday for the first one. I'm like, this could be easy. Then I started reading all the other
And
ones.
then
Go ahead.
Okay, second audit, police and fire college incentive pay. The purpose of this audit was to ensure that the proper backup supporting documentation, such as college transcripts and or diplomas, are maintained in respective employee personnel files to support college incentive payments made by the town, and to ensure that the correct college incentive dollar amounts were properly paid to employees based upon the degree or the correct number of qualifying credits held in accordance with union contract language or employment agreements. The biannual college incentive pay test for fire department for FY '24 was $8,450, and for police it was $51,150. 117 employees received college incentive payments. Findings. Fire department, no errors or exceptions were noted during the audit examination of employee college incentive pay. There were 23 employees who received college incentive pay. 10 employees were sampled, equaling 44% of the population. Police department. 3 employees within the audit sample did not have the correct number of college credits to support payments made to them. Grand total overpayment, $2,425. 94 employees were sampled who received college incentive payments. 30 of those employees were tested for audit sampling, which was 32% of the population. Audit recommendation, copies of college diplomas and or transcripts for all employees receiving college incentive pay should be submitted to Human Resources and maintained on hand for their files. The college incentive pay spreadsheets used by Human Resources for both police and fire departments should be cross-referenced to diplomas and or transcripts of employees 100% to ensure accuracy prior to signing and submittal to payroll for processing. Internal audit follow-up. Per conversations with the police chief, the police department has conducted a 100% review of employee diplomas and or transcripts and compared them to college incentive payments made to ensure their accuracy. And this was completed in December 2024. The 2 individuals identified in the audit who were overpaid were corrected in their records. Copies of these employee diplomas and transcripts were sent to Human Resources for their own cross-referencing and verification prior to future college incentive payment made. Per conversations with Peter Ritchie, Assistant Director of Human Resources, the 2 identified individuals in the audit were also corrected by them in their records. HR is also working on recouping the overpayments from the employees at this time. They are also working with the union as well to address this recoupment. And are there any questions?
Questions on that one?
Yes, so thank you for this. So the police department did 100% review. That's great. What were the results of that?
I have a representative from the police department here. If you'd like to speak on that.
So we did the 100% review. I tried to get in contact with the captain and his admin assistant who conducted the review to find out if they had detected any other inconsistencies, either against or in favor of the town or the officers. I didn't get in touch with them yet, so I don't have an answer to that question. But what I do know is that as of the end of the 100% audit and the results that they turned in December, everything was corrected.
Okay.
So the most recent spreadsheet that was submitted is accurate and up to date. So that was applied to the disbursement of college incentive pay that happened at the end of 2024.
Okay. To us then. And just one other question. So what changes were made to the review process or the process to make sure that these are that the proper documentation and support is there going forward?
Absolutely. So we're our control measures moving forward. We want to ensure preservation of data and continuity of practice. And we are moving on those as we speak. These measures include ease of access to repositories of historical data, more frequent internal audits and updates, increased communication, both interdepartmentally and with human resources, more frequent cross-referencing and reconciling of records, and peer-to-peer shadowing and training prior to official transitions between personnel. So those are kinds of the issues that caused the oversights in the first place. We had specifically the chief's administrative assistant position was vacant for a very long time. And that position is responsible for maintaining a lot of our processes, specifically to the college incentive pay. So bringing in a new person after all of that time, there's historical data that's lost, there's knowledge of processes that's lost. And that problem occurring is not specific to that position. We've seen it in a couple of other areas within the police department, only because in the last couple of years, we've had like a uniquely high frequency of movement of personnel, either employee turnover or reassignments of personnel. So that's really what we need to focus on, is how are we ensuring that data stays up to date and accurate, and that the employees that are moving, whether sworn or non-sworn, moving to different positions, that they're maintaining continuity in those processes. So that has been our focus over the last couple of weeks.
So I have a question for Connie, because I think that's not a situation that's limited to the police department, that whenever there's transition, that if there's a gap, sometimes all the job responsibilities don't carry forward. Has human resources worked on that? I know that was always an open item or question project that was ongoing.
I have noticed that when an employee leaves or separates with the town of Fairfield, sometimes their knowledge and policies and procedures and processes are not written or given to the person who takes their position. So unfortunately, sometimes we lose internal controls. And I've seen that quite a bit in some of the audits that I've conducted. And I know human resources is looking into this, but I don't know if they have established any practices or policies and procedures to address the situation.
So could we look into establishing a policy that when someone terminates or leaves, that either job description is written or they meet with their supervisor to document,
Right, document what they do.
Exit interview.
An exit interview.
Yeah, I mean, and I agree with that, although I think that having the written policies and procedures to begin with would help.
Be the best.
It's not to wait till someone leaves and ask them to
It should be
transition. It should be,
documented.
because if you have an admin that's responsible for approving these payments, you know, they should know, what do I have to do to approve something? What type of documentation should I be looking for? What is the policy? What does the contract say? And if that's not written down, then we'll always have this issue. So I guess just as a follow-up, maybe, now, so we have a new admin in place, it sounds like.
Not,
Oh, we
that
don't.
position is
Oh,
vacant again.
It's vacant again. Okay.
So we, between the chief and myself and my admin assistant, we're trying to keep very close control over
Right.
the businesses that are now not being handled by a specific individual, so that when we do fill that position, we'll have a better ability to train that person and ensure that they're picking up where the last person left off.
And can I just suggest, and as a to-do, I mean, do you guys have the, will you have the capacity, or do you need help in getting those policies written down so that they can, you know, survive the next transition?
We have the capacity, and we are actively.
You're doing that. Yeah, and I know this is not unique to the police department. In fact, there's another audit coming up where, you know, we see this time and time again where someone is responsible for approving things, and then we see errors. And so it's not always clear that the person who's responsible for approving knows what they're supposed to do before they sign off on something. We saw that on solar invoices, and it's come up, credit cards. I mean, it's come up time and time again.
And it's it's kind of interesting that you say that, because the other day I said I should just focus on audits where an employee has left and the position's been vacant for a while and a new employee came in. And unfortunately, because we don't have policies and procedures and job roles and responsibilities and written anywhere, the new person's not quite sure what they're supposed to be doing, what the expectations are, and then you lose a lot of those internal controls, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, it would be good if, you know, it would be good to do it proactively, but also in terms of the recommendations, you know, we should be doing audits after the fact, but writing the policies down and making sure we're getting those established. I'm not sure that's an HR thing necessarily, because they don't know.
It would really be a
You know, they're
function
gonna have
of the
their own,
department.
they had their own issues here,
Right,
right?
right,
They were
right.
not properly authorizing these either. So that's their issue to fix, but in terms of what happens before something gets to them, having that written down, I think is important. So, you know, that I think is an important follow-up.
Definitely. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
And thank you. We appreciate your comments.
Absolutely.
The next audit, review of H. Smith Richardson Golf Course Tee Time Scheduling. Purpose, to ensure that practices governing the manner in which player tee times are assigned at H. Smith Richardson Golf Course are sound, fair, and equitable for all golfers. To ensure that the reservation and assignment of tee times are in conformance with the Town of Fairfield Golf Course policy and procedures. To ensure that automated software programs and applications, also known as bots, are not used by patrons to reserve tee times, and to identify and disclose weaknesses in the manner in which player tee times are assigned. This audit was requested by First Selectman Gerber. Just to let you know, so I went to the golf course and conducted the audit, and the finding was H. Smith Richardson Golf Course players identified a difficulty in booking tee times during highly desired golf play days and times online. Internal audit attributed this to a significant influx of new golfers in the golf industry from the inception of COVID to present. Additionally, the number of golfers has increased, but the number of golf courses has not, which has further contributed to the difficulty in obtaining tee times. It's simply a matter of supply and demand. An analytical review conducted for H. Smith Richardson further revealed that the total number of rounds and total season passes has also risen significantly from fiscal year 2020 compared to present. Finding, a review of tee times booked by players on prime golf play days on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for the months of June and July 2024 revealed that one person, a golf employee paid by the golf pro, had regularly booked tee times on Saturdays and Sundays, often in advance of the 7-day time rule, and not online through the HSR Golf Tee Time booking website, as required by golf course policy and procedures. Internal audit follow-up. The identified player is no longer allowed to book during prime tee times on prime playing days. All employees, town and golf pro employees alike, are required to book tee times similar to all non-employee players and must use the online tee time booking system to be fair and equitable. And as further follow-up, I spoke to the golf pro today, and the aforementioned employee is actually no longer employed at H. Smith Richardson Golf Course. Recommendation, the Golf Commission should establish a written policy governing employee play at the golf course by which all employees must abide. The policy should include language defining which employees may play, the manner of accessing and booking tee times, the days and times of authorized play, number of times played authorized per week, and the fee charged to employees per play, including golf cart usage fees. This will make booking employee tee times clearer, fairer, and more equitable. Finding, a review of daily tee times booked and associated names of persons who played during those tee times revealed that tee times can be properly booked online through the HSR Golf Tee Time booking website by patrons. And these are residents with a resident ID or season pass, or non-residents with a season pass. However, this person does not actually play with the foursome listed as play. There are no written guidelines in the golf course's policy and procedures prohibiting this practice. Audit recommendation: if this practice is deemed unfair, then a formal policy should be created by the Golf Commission, which prohibits this manner of booking. The policy should be posted online on the HSR Golf Tee Time Booking website. I spoke to the Director of Recreation today, Mr. Anthony Calabrese, and the issue of tee times has been discussed at recent Golf Commission meetings. No changes to the current tee time system are planned by the Golf Commission at this time for Mr. Calabrese. The audit report was shared with Mr. Calabrese, Mr. Bigonet, and Mr. Seachrist, who is the chair of the Golf Commission. They are copied on the report. Mr. Seachrist was provided an opportunity to respond to the audit, however, did not have any comment to add to it. Mr. Bigonet's response is added to the report. And today I spoke to Mr. Seachrist, the report, and Mr. Calabrese. The report has not yet been shared with the Golf Commission. Mr. Calabrese was waiting to share the report with them after it was discussed with the board. Do you have any questions on this?
I think there should be discussion with the Golf Commission about your findings. And I mean, I think I agree with some of them I can understand that. Well, I don't personally have a problem with someone waiting. I think your audit found that individuals are booking tee time for golfers, but not necessarily playing with those 4 individuals. I think that's kind of common.
Yes.
And I'm not necessarily sure. But sometimes when you book a tee time a week out, that you know you're going to be playing with 3 people, but you don't know what 3 people you're playing with. So, but I think they should have a discussion, their meeting, and seriously consider what you're suggesting here, or at least your findings.
I agree, definitely.
Yeah, I agree. The response was not responsive, in my opinion. I don't think, I think that this is something the Golf Commission has to look at. I think they have to look at the policy. If employees are permitted to, basically play for free at the course, that's fine if that's what the commission decides on. But I think the whole notion of whether they can do that during peak times if there's such a demand, and certainly not booking it in advance. But whatever the policy is, I think there also needs to be something to monitor that it's actually not being abused. So I think that one of the responses in here was, all right, I'm going to tell this guy not to do that. And, that's not a control. Somebody there, first of all, it shouldn't be a policy that's just put in place by an individual. It should be, the Golf Commission should revisit the policy. And, in light of the audit, and the fact, and the reason why this audit came up, because we've got a lot of complaints from the public. And I'd like to see a response from the Golf Commission. So they can, I know they're going to be coming before the Board of Finance at some time in the future for, for funding for some of their capital projects. And I'd like to see them take this seriously and respond to it.
You can tell.
And I don't have a comment. I'm not suggesting what they do with the policy, but they need to own the policy.
So I think at our February regular Board of Finance meeting, we're gonna talk about these audits in front of everybody. So maybe before that meeting, they get some input from them. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe they can, modify or add an addendum to the response.
At least tell you that they're gonna look at it, they're studying it. I don't have an issue with employees, maybe if there's a policy where a town employee plays for free at the golf course. The issue I have is if they're playing for free at the prime time morning, you were losing money, right?
Town employees do pay, though. They do pay.
They do pay.
They pay for golf carts and for play, but a reduced rate.
Reduced rate. Oh, so it's not for free.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood this then. This is sort
Is
of
it the resident rate or is it an even further?
Why does this say that there was no, I was just looking at this chart, so I assumed that they were.
I think town employees do pay a reduced rate? I'll have to double check on that. And then I think golf employees do not.
The guys who actually work at the golf
Yeah.
course, they usually play for free. I get that.
I'll have to double check.
Okay.
I'll double check.
Connie, it's not during working hours, correct? It's
Oh,
on their
no,
free time.
not during working hours.
Okay.
No, it's just a kind of a benefit that they are allowed to have.
Right, but it should be off hours, I would think, if it's at a reduced rate.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that, I'm pretty sure town employees are paying it.
What I meant was the guys that work at the golf course. I mean, I get it. That's
These are the
fine if
people that
that's
work at the golf
If
course.
that's the policy, that's the
Not
policy. but
somebody
it
like
shouldn't
myself,
be-
yeah.
Correct. It shouldn't be, this is it's a public area. It's a town asset and this is not, this is not just a perk to people that, live there. And it would be one thing if we didn't have such a demand and if we weren't getting complaints from the public, but given the demand that there is and how difficult it is for, paying residents
Right.
and others to get tee times, I think the golf commission really needs to do this.
And I just had one follow-up question on the booking and then not playing with the group. I just wanted to confirm, because I'm not a golfer, I don't know exactly how this works. So if someone books, there's no one out there that's booking and then selling these golf times out there
I would hope
to other
not.
people. I just wanted to
I
make
would hope
sure that
not.
it's,
But
that's,
Yeah, we had a meeting with Anthony today and that question was raised and he said, no, that is not true. What happens is if you have 4 guys or ladies who are playing together, they will all try and book an early tee time. And whichever gets the earlier tee time, that's the tee time they typically would choose. And then the other 3 spots go back into the queue.
To the queue, okay. I gotta tell you, I've been here a long time. The system maybe has some kinks, but in the old days, you used to drive up there and sleep in the parking lot
yes,
to get a tea time the next morning. And so it was the same regular people who always got the tea times, and so it's a lot better than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago, I can tell you that.
my father used to take turns.
Yeah, they take turns.
Early.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you want to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning,
know.
and book your- that's great, first come, first serve, but it, for employees, you should just make sure that they're not abusing the system. And again, I think that the golf commission should respond.
All right,
okay.
what's the next one?
The next one was the audit overview of COVID recovery fund and verification of payments made from the fund in Munis to amounts approved by the COVID recovery panel. Purpose: to ensure that the correct amounts were paid from the COVID recovery fund as reported in Munis and that they agreed to amounts approved by the COVID recovery panel. Findings: application 15 was approved by the panel for $13.93 but a payment to a different applicant was made for $4,200 based upon an application that was not presented by the Director of Social and Human Services to the panel. She had incorrectly presented the panel with an incorrect applicant and application detail and amounts, which the panel approved. This was attributed to human error on her part. Application 20 was approved by the panel for $155.80 for phone bill assistance, but it was incorrectly paid toward rental assistance. Recommendation: in the future, where independent panels are used to review and vote on the distribution of funds for humanitarian needs, a copy of the panel vote and approved applicant narrative should be attached to all pink vouchers submitted to finance for payment to avoid future payment errors and to ensure that the correct applicants are paid. Do you have any questions?
When the $4,200 was paid to the,
Right.
that individual apply?
Yes, that individual had actually applied, submitted all the documentation, but for somehow there was a confusion and an incorrect application narrative was sent to the panel. Panel reviewed it, not knowing, and approved it. And then later when I went to check Munis and I agreed it to all the applications that had been sent to the panel, I noticed the discrepancy and contacted the Director of Social and Human Services, and she said she had made an error.
Did anyone know about the error until you found it?
No one knew. I said that I had recommended that she at least let the panel know that she had made the error and give the panel the correct application for their review.
Is she doing, has she?
No. I think at that point, time had passed and then the COVID recovery fund was being closed and we were not accepting any more applications or distributing funds from it.
So $13.93 approved by the panel, was that paid?
No, no, that was not paid. She gave the application, the narrative for $13.93. We all reviewed it, approved it, but then later a different application was sent to finance for payment.
Yeah, I never liked this fund. If we ever do something like this again, and I hope we do not, because I don't think we should be in the business of doing this, frankly. I do not agree with this, with the anonymity. If we have a committee, we are entrusting to approve applications, they should have access to the information. I mean, if we don't trust the committee, then people shouldn't be on the committee. And I think the committee should be given the payment information, and they should have to approve the payment information, because I don't understand how a committee gets an application and a completely different application gets paid and the first one doesn't. And human error is not a good explanation. And so I would just say that if people are on a committee, first of all, if you're coming to the town of Fairfield and you're asking for financial assistance, you know, we're not going to broadcast that, but, you know, you're giving up some degree of confidence. In order to apply, just like you do for tax relief and other things, you have to provide financial information, you have to provide things. The people that are responsible for approving that have to be entrusted with the information. And once again, before things are paid, somebody's got to know they're signing off on the right thing. So we had a check go out the door for something that wasn't approved by the committee. So it seems like there was a disconnect between the committee approval process and the payment process, which is not acceptable.
Even previous to that, I had, at the time, the pink vouchers were coming into finance and being paid. And I had met with the former budget director and I said, before you sign, he had reviewed all the applications and signed off on them. I said, just make sure you have backup, get the narratives and which have the dollar amounts that the panel has approved, at least get some backup documentation that shows that the panel has approved this application prior to payment. And that had not been done.
I don't know why the budget director would be the one approving it, but that's neither here nor there. Mr. Becker, wasn't there another issue with it? Like you had told us quite a while ago that we were having an outside legal review on this fund. What happened with that?
Yeah, and just to answer on the last one, the budget director, so it was going through the pink voucher process. So under 2,500 is signed off in that process by the budget director. Process of changing some things about the pink voucher process and who does some of the sign-offs, but in this particular period of time, which all but one predated invoices, so data, but the budget director, and then over 2,500 would be the budget director, and then also the CFO thresholds. So these are expenses, and they move through that process. So even though you know to some degree you'd say, well, why is this particular thing that you do this sort of the budget? Because it moves through the pink voucher process. Those were the sign-offs, and I
Not
do agree
the
with you.
controller.
No, the controller doesn't sign off on, and that process doesn't sign off on. Actually, in your normal process, even for requisitions, the controller typically isn't the one signing off. It's usually the budget director, or the CFO.
Or both. Okay.
Or both. And we're in the process of doing this.
I have had a meeting with David and Bill, and we agreed that the entire process needs to be review. And as to what changes, if any we make, I don't know, but we are gonna take a good.
I just, it seems like there's an ongoing training issue and so Tom, for your benefit, I mean, I think you'll see this theme come up again and again where we have, payments being made out of this town that don't have support, or we, had to go find the support after the fact. And it just feels like an ongoing, it crops up everywhere, and it's just an ongoing, I think, training / control issue, which, as I said before, with the police overtime, people are signing off on things without either understanding or, doing what they're supposed to be doing to say, okay, when I put my signature on something and I approve it, that means I've done certain things. It means I know there's appropriate documentation. So, I'm always kind of shocked. I mean, some of these aren't big dollars, but when it's systemic, this could be applicable to big dollars as well. And so that's until we get some of those things in place. I mean, I know Mr. Becker is at to a point where he was like literally reviewing every check that went out the door. That's not really a sustainable thing to do. But
Paper.
no, but something to figure out where the holes are and what we have to do systemically to fix it is really necessary. But as I said, and I do want to get back to my question.
Yeah.
On the legal review, because I thought there was something else with this fund.
So, yeah, not I can say, I think at this point, it's all that deals with, also, still working. There went outside.
Is it
An outside review. I believe it has been, HR is the central point for that item. But it deals with an elected official, and in theory, it's supposed to go to, as I understand it, to ethics, and if it's a employee, we're gonna have to, maybe both, but certainly they have to deal with that. So
Okay,
that did not come back until towards the end. So. But we think we talked about this.
yeah, that was a while ago. Okay,
So, I can try to get a better, offer possible for the next subcommittee.
Okay.
There's a few weeks. I can't guarantee being able to talk about a lot if it's still in that phase with personnel.
okay.
All right.
Can I just ask one more question? Do we have any other pot of money that like this
Like the COVID
town,
fund?
like social services, where we're paying for people's cell phone bills or rent, or we're helping people I really want to understand this, because this process like worries me a little bit. And, the COVID recovery fund was a unique thing and it's shut down now. But are there other circumstances where we are, as a town, basically providing financial assistance to people? And if so, is that in our budget?
I believe that Social and Human Services does have some accounts. I believe they're budgeted. And for example, it's called the Warming Fund, where they provide assistance to people for heating, that sort of thing, right, Dave?
Yeah, and some of them are paid through community development block grants,
Okay.
as well. So they have an economic development, or really the community portion of economic development, right, that office. But they're driven by but they're driven, really driven by social services. So.
So this is not taxpayer money, you're saying? It's grant money that's being distributed through?
I wouldn't say all of it, but a big portion of it, for instance, like the warming funds and,
And you have to document how you use that money. There's usually strict rules when you use grant money, so hopefully they're doing that. Otherwise, we lose the grants in the future,
Yeah, and there are also things that come in, funds in through donations as an example. We then pay those funds to the Rotary back in December. And the Rotary then provides gift cards. Those gift cards are then given out to, you know, to people and that social services works with, you know, are low income and in need during the holidays. To be honest, December for almost 2 weeks to trying to sort that out, and sort of in the end, we decided that so this year we couldn't stop it. We had already advertised to donate towards this, you know, and need to go, but you know, I had a very strict, and you'll even see, I think on the pink vouchers I signed had like a will be revisited for next year notation initial next to it, because I signed off on it, and I'd say I felt a little bit uncomfortable with it, because it's the kind of thing that you go to social services and they say, well, this is just normal and we have our lists and it's people, and I go, did you follow the trail there? I mean, something just, you know, any sane person would go, this is a little odd if they have kind of a magnifying glass on all the issues that we've had in the past, right? So that's something that we intend on prior to next year, revisiting, not to say that we may not have a great option to stop it, but you have wondered, well, maybe there's other places to turn people to. Why is the town handling these things? Government is a little bit different than saying.
I think we have to be careful with donations and grants in particular, but I'm also particularly interested in any taxpayer money that's sitting in our budget that we're using to help people on a discretionary basis. I just think we need some transparency around that and an understanding of the process, given that we've had some of these issues, because this shouldn't just live somewhere with, you know, I mean, it's just somebody deciding who's deserving and who isn't. I mean, we have a lot of people in this town who, you know, are struggling with one thing or another. And I think, you know, this is the sort of thing we should be careful with. So I would just ask as a follow-up,
Yes.
if we, you know, can maybe understand in its entirety, if we have programs similar to this, what are they all? How do they work? And if some of them involve taxpayer money that's sort of funneled through our budget, I'd really like to understand those. And, you know, frankly, whether we should be, you know, in the business of doing that. I you know, just,
Definitely.
and if we are, you know, making sure that it's being made available to people in an equitable way. Cause one of my problems that I said with the COVID fund is I didn't know who knew. You know, I mean, a lot of people like this didn't know it was available. You don't want to get into a situation where this becomes some friends and family thing. You know, I'm not saying that's what's happened, but that's the risk. So thank you.
And I just wanted to follow up on that employee, the employee who did not pay. He was a golf employee hired by the golf pro, who worked directly for the golf pro and was paid by the golf. He did not pay for his golf play. However, town employees who work at the golf course do pay for their play at a reduced rate, but this particular person did not pay at that time.
Okay.
We got 7 more to go, so.
All right, this one, audit, Fairfield Tax Assessor, Senior and Disabled Tax Relief Program. The total amount of tax credit pertaining to these tax relief applications was $3.17 million in FY25. The purpose of this audit was to ensure that people who received tax relief properly met the eligibility requirements as designated by town code guidelines surrounding tax relief for elderly and disabled homeowners under the program. To ensure that taxpayers were receiving the correct amounts of tax credit due based on income reported. Confirm that proper backup documentation was present to support income reported on applications. Finding was noted during the audit examination that not all applications processed for tax relief credit were evidenced by a signature or date of the department staff member who processed the application. Further, not all applications processed were evidenced by a tax assessor affidavit sign off designating his review or approval of the application. Recommendation, it was recommended that the tax assessor ensure that all department staff sign off on every application processed and that the tax assessor as department head sign off on these applications, designating his supervisory review and approval. Further, this will serve as a secondary review and will assist in capturing possible application errors as well as ensuring that the proper supporting documentation is evident. Findings: some applications for tax relief examined during the audit were evidenced by tax returns, but no 1099 documentation was present to support the income reported by the applicant. Recommendation: it was recommended that all supporting documentation be present when processing applications for tax relief. Supporting documents are necessary for the validity of the applicant's income and other exemptions for determining the amount of tax relief credit. Internal audit follow-up. Per meetings with the tax assessor, all required QDS software issues noted during the audit were corrected. Necessary corrections and adjustments to taxpayer accounts noted during the audit have been made. The tax assessor will conduct final reviews to ensure that all required documentation has been submitted by the applicant and that necessary information from these documents is properly reflected in QDS as shown by his review and approval sign off on application forms. Do you have any questions?
My only question is there any sense from Ross that, this is a general question, that does he have enough people? I guess that's the question, to do all of this. Was there any sense that
Well, he never.
some of this is happening because he doesn't have enough
He
staff?
never stated that
Said
he
that?
was understaffed.
Right.
I believe, in my personal observation, that some of the, the tax returns, the backup documentation requires someone with a little bit more maybe accounting experience, that sort of thing, to look at the 1099s and the interest income and all that sort of thing. And maybe the personnel were not properly trained. But I believe that if Ross Murray, as tax assessor, if he reviews those applications and the supporting backup documentation as a secondary review, he could capture any mistakes prior to them.
And people, from reading this, people were mostly shortchanged. It sounds like.
Yes,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
One was overpaid.
And that's not good.
Yes.
I had forwarded this to the leaders of the Senior and Disabled Tax Review Committee on the RTM and the Board of Finance, just for their information. I think that, I know that they tend to look at policy, but I think it would be good for them to understand how the policies are executed and ask these questions. So thank you for doing this audit and
It's administrative work
Yeah.
that goes along with the
Right.
policy.
Yeah.
And it's work.
Yeah.
A lot to it.
There is.
Is there an assistant tax assessor in Fairfield? I think so.
Counts as, he's got a number 2.
I thought so.
All right, whatever, I'll look it. That's fine. Any other questions on this one? All right,
Audit
There's
certificate.
a deputy, it's
deputy.
Ken.
Okay, I know. Yes.
Yeah, he's officially.
Okay. Excellent. All right, audit certificates of insurance. Purpose: to ensure that certificates of insurance were properly submitted to the town of Fairfield as specified per the terms of the signed contractual agreements with the town, and to verify that the certificates of insurance were up to date for the correct coverage amounts and that the town of Fairfield is named as additional insured. Findings: 65 contractual agreements were identified requiring certificates of insurance to be submitted to the town of Fairfield per the terms of contracts reviewed, such as property leases, independent contractor agreements, food truck agreements, solar power leases. 53 certificates of insurance, or 81.5% of the total examined, were not on file with either risk management or other town departments. There's no comprehensive list of required certificates of insurance and risk management or elsewhere in town. Additionally, it was noted that Munis has the capability to allow a scanned PDF copy of each certificate of insurance to be attached and saved directly to vendors who are required to carry this insurance under bid contractual terms. However, this feature is not used. Audit recommendation: it's recommended that the town appoint the risk manager And it should be noted that some of those roles are currently overseen by this Assistant Director of Human Resources. As the central authority responsible for obtaining certificates of insurance from all parties as required by town written contractual agreements, and to ensure that all certificates on hand are up to date with the correct amounts and properly name the town as additional insured. Follow-up. I spoke to the Director of Purchasing, who will scan certificates of insurance in Munis for user reference. Further, the town is currently working on addressing the roles and responsibilities that were previously held by a former risk manager, and they're treating this as top priority.
Is it, and maybe David, you can chime in, is it we used to have a risk manager, but the last administration, for whatever reason, felt that that wasn't necessary. It's beyond me why they came to that conclusion. I don't think this type of job should be housed in human resources. It's really a human resource thing. I guess my question is are we looking to have someone come in as the risk manager, a new position or an old position that we're going to fill again? What's the idea here?
Yes, the only thing is previously it was a full-time person that was just the risk manager and everything was centralized. And yes, it was under human resources.
Okay.
And it was at the time.
And they handled all manner of insurance as
They
well.
handled
A lot of things.
all aspects of it as the risk manager, right? There's also a safety committee aspect, you know.
Who's doing that stuff now?
So right now, the assistant director, the way that this rework, yes, the assistant director has been handling that. Finance has taken some aspects of the financial side of risk to try to assist. That was something, you know, that certainly is a task as well. So we are re-looking at it. One is most likely going to move up to operations. Two, the question is whether or not you actually hire a person full-time and that's all they do. Or you look at, do you at least break some of the responsibilities up? And can that person that gets hired be half of their FTE, either at a part-time, you know, 29.5 level employee, which is pretty substantial still, if you can find, you know, somebody who could do it, but or if they're multi-hat. And in part because I'll give you the example of insurance, right? So that's obviously, that is something that a risk manager can build out a program for, or can oversee, but is really a base level. It's largely clerical and frankly at times suck. So if you're going to bring a risk manager in, it should be focusing on the risk management aspects, and half their time or a quarter of their time is, you know, COIs that might be able to be, you know, placed with another employee to focus on that lane, but they're overseeing it. You might find yourself a little bit better served. We're you know, we are we call ourselves self-insured. We are in some instances fully insured, in most instances, you know, heavily reinsured. However, we are evaluating if in an environment where we took on possibly a different working of our broker and our insurance threshold level, you may find some of those things that were then being done in-house might actually start to get done more at the broker level. And that may reduce the amount of time. I'm not saying that we're in the end gonna settle up on a full-time risk manager, but I think with.
But are we gonna know the answer by the time the budget? Okay.
We are, yes.
So it'll be figured out by the budgets.
Okay, and can I just, Connie, if you don't mind,
No.
the scope of your audit, though, it seems like you left out a lot, right? You only focused on,
Well,
I mean, you didn't look at the purchasing.
correct.
Yeah, so you didn't look at the
Right.
major bids where we have,
I touched upon that in the audit report, because there are other areas where certificates of insurance are required.
right,
Bids. We also have community and economic development where work is done on people's houses. They're required to have certificates of insurance. Yeah, these were the ones that were strictly leases, town leases, the ones that I knew about, the solar power purchase agreements, some food trucks, and
And
as a
that's my
result
only
of.
point was the
Right.
scope of the audit was narrow, so the
Right.
certificate of insurance and the risk issue is much broader
Right,
than this.
right.
And the bigger
Right.
dollars and the bigger risks are probably in those other
Exactly.
areas, which
Yeah,
not clear how that would fall into the organization that you're thinking
Well-
about and the responsibilities, but there's more to address
Right.
than
Yeah.
potentially than what's in here.
There's
The contractor
Right.
that sends purchasing a COI and gets added into a file, there's the question, why is it not going into something? I mean, it's good, this is a systems thing to some extent.
Sure is.
And it's something certainly with CFO.
Take the
It's
system.
another person in the team, which frees a big, it only frees up a chunk of time. I mean, I work a lot of hours and don't mind and multitask. But, every hour that I'm able to shed from some of that function will now allow for one of the things that I think is a major initiative on my end, which is our systems. We do not have a lot of the types of systems you would think that we have that oftentimes, small businesses or major corporations have. We are lacking. There is not a central place for something like this. Get it in, you put the date, expires, someone gets a flag that it's coming up in 30 days, whether it's a bid or it's a lease. We don't have any of that. And some of them are not even complex systems in all reality. We just don't have them all.
So,
Go ahead, Mary.
for all these contracts, there's probably other things that we need to track
yeah.
Yeah.
besides the insurance.
Like
Yes,
bonds
there's
and.
no point.
Payments increases,
Yeah.
changes.
Right, the contractual
Bonds.
agreements originate from various places at purchasing department, the town attorney, the recreation department, DPW administration, community and economic development. So there's all these departments who have contractual agreements, which require certificates of insurance, but we don't have one spot who is monitoring all this and tracking it and making sure that all these certificates are up to date on file and for the correct amounts.
Someone should be doing it monthly, so like the month before.
And that was what I found when I did my audit. There really is no list of who should be providing the town with a certificate of insurance,
I mean, when it comes to, I know the first selectman talked at one point somewhere along the line about a risk committee and sort of looking at what should be under that umbrella. When we talked about the vehicle audit last time, some of these same issues came up. So, I think of all the audits, this was the one that really kind of made my hair stand up a little bit. So this is one I think that's,
The whole public works thing, and that was a key
well, exactly.
issue, and we thought we
Yeah.
resolved.
Yeah, a lot of the lawsuits were embroiled and we didn't, we hadn't done some of the basics in terms of making sure that our contractors were. Okay.
Okay, audit, Fairfield Fire Department overtime payroll. I won't spend a lot of time on this because basically what I discovered was the shift differential rate for firefighters, lieutenants, assistant chiefs, commencing July 1, 2024 should have been 1.60945, but Munis had not been updated at time of audit by Human Resources and still reflected the old prior year shift differential rate of pay. This negatively affects the overtime rate paid to firefighters. They will be underpaid for all overtime hours worked. I had recommended that they correct the shift differential rate in Munis, that Human Resources perform this, and internal audit follow-up, the shift differential rate has been corrected in Munis by Human Resources.
I'm surprised you didn't get a grievance on that, the town right away.
I'm surprised myself to be.
It's just contractual based on collective bargaining.
Yes, it is in the union
Did you
contract.
identify this, like the firefighters themselves didn't
No.
identify that they were, okay?
What?
What,
No
can
one's,
I, and this is just.
they may have known, but
Losing money. They
Back
should-
to the written policies and procedures, this sounds like a one-time thing. We're in HR at the beginning of the fiscal year. You've got to update stuff. Once again, there a checklist of written down. By July 1, these are all the things that have to happen.
Usually that's when contract increases happen, usually July 1st, and
Right.
that's when they,
And
this all should
here's
be
all the
done.
things that need to be done. In the absence of those types of written procedures, this stuff is gonna continue to happen, and then obviously we generate all the issues with having to deal with spending time doing back pay and fixing it, et cetera. So,
So to me, that sounds like something we should require of the attorney that negotiates those contracts. That when they finalize a contract, they give us like a checklist of all the requirements we need to meet the change throughout the contract.
I mean, I was thinking more like shift differentials being updated is something like every year you're gonna have. So when there's, as far as I know, July 1 is, or getting ready for July 1 payroll is a big deal in HR, because all kinds of stuff has to be updated. And so in my mind, I was thinking more of, you know, what's a complete body of all the things that HR person responsible for doing all these things should be checking off, whether it relates to benefit rates, whether it relates to, you know,
Increase, all that stuff.
yeah, anything. Contractual increases, shift differential updates for existing, you know, whatever it might be. And, you know, 1 year it might be like not applicable, no change, contract hasn't been settled, but there's a comprehensive list of what they're supposed to be doing. So it sounds like they just missed this. They just didn't update them. And that seems like it could be, and I'm not trying to be critical. I know there's a lot of things going on, but like that should, we shouldn't be missing things like that.
Yeah, and I think, you know, PD is quarterly as well. Certain adjustments quarterly in the bid for different shifts, there's different shift differential factors, so
Yeah.
that's an ongoing item. And but you're right, the July 1 is your biggest because you've got a lot of calls. Yeah, so this year was, between the two was definitely trailed, and then, you know, every week it was 5 4 times retro it.
Audit of governmental money purchase plan, 401A plan, established in April 2007. The purpose of this audit was to provide management with a comprehensive list of employees who had received 401A benefit from a plan administered by the Town of Fairfield Human Resources Department from April 9th, 2007 through January 31, 2024. To also provide management with a reason for the original establishment of the plan. To ensure that employees who had received the 401A plan benefit were properly entitled to it. It was noted during audit examinations that only 4 employees had participated in this plan over approximately 17 years in its existence. Finding 2 of the 4 employee personnel files could not be located by Human Resources. 1 employee did not have an original signed enrollment form for the 401A plan in their personnel file. 1 employee moved from full-time to part-time status, but was still allowed to participate in the plan, even though plan terms stipulated that only full-time employees were allowed to participate. 1 employee, who was the former director of Human Resources, had participated in the 401A plan and was also responsible for overseeing the same plan within the Human Resources Department. This person had the authority to offer town employees enrollment into the plan. Internal audit follow-up. The 401A plan established in April 2007 has been properly terminated, effective January 31, 2024. Finding, additional audit test work conducted on overall town employee 7 plans revealed that some employees in the audit sample tested were also allowed to exceed the maximum annual contribution limits for their plans. Follow-up, maximum contribution limits are now entered by Human Resources into Munis for all employees who are enrolled in the 457 plan to prevent over contributions from occurring.
How just, and you accountant people probably know this, how can you put more into the plans than what's legally allowed? And what's the consequence of that? Is there a tax consequence?
The consequence is if they're over
You're
contributing.
paying taxes on that stuff.
Yes, they would have to pay taxes on.
Should have to reimburse it. and
Yes.
pay the penalty.
That's correct. Yes, and unfortunately that happened to some employees as a result of the,
Well, this is gone now.
yes,
Okay.
the forfeit 401A plan is terminated.
It's done.
Yes, and now employees will not over contribute because limits have been placed. So that will not happen in the future.
I don't have any questions on this specifically, but just in terms of a broader issue, the fact that you had to like do all this research and digging to figure out the background to this. Do we have a repository for our benefit plans that is online somewhere? And, you know, 'cause I remember
No, it's all
back when the
paper.
whole thing with the management benefits that, you know, former first select woman, that whole thing, you know, that we were trying to dig up policies, who signed off on what and when and why.
Something like this,
Are they
it's all
somewhere?
paper, however,
Can we fix that? Is there any reason that these policies should not be in an online repository available to the public? I mean,
that would
because
require
our
someone
budget,
scanning and placing
Okay.
it in there, yeah.
I mean, how many policies are there?
Well, there's a lot of, there's,
We benefit, yeah.
oh, for human resources, yeah, I'd have to consult with human resources, but on the town side, we have quite a few policies and procedures in place.
Okay, I'll move on.
Okay. Audit, review of town cell phones in compliance with the town technology policy to provide town management with an updated comprehensive list of town cell phones issued to employees by department to ensure that the invoice is paid to Verizon Wireless, AT&T Mobility, FirstNet designate charges that pertain to cell phones issued to active town employees to ensure that employees are complying with town technology policy governing town issued cell phones. 205 employees possess town issued cell phones as of March 31, 2024. The total cost paid to Verizon and AT&T Mobility over the 9-month period for cell phones and other associated wireless charges was approximately $150,000. Findings: employees are allowed to keep their cell phone after separation of employment, which is contrary to the guidelines in the current town policy. Follow-up with the director of IT revealed that this only occurs if the phone is no longer of any use to the town due to age and condition, etc., thus incurring no cost to the town. It was also noted that one employee had retired in January 2024, but the monthly cell phone bill for this employee was still being paid after his separation of employment in March 2024. The self-service was promptly suspended upon internal audit notification to the department head, and the cell phone was returned back to the town IT department. The total dollar amount of overpayment was deemed to be immaterial in dollar amount to the amount of $120.10. Recommendation: due to the high number of cell phones issued to town, police and fire department employees, it's recommended that an audit of paid cellular devices, as shown on monthly invoices, be conducted on an annual basis to ensure that the town is not unnecessarily and improperly paying for cell phones of separated employees. It was also recommended that human resources distribute the technology policy to employees who currently possess town-issued cell phones, as well as employees who possess town iPads, laptops, etc., so they're aware of the responsibilities and expectations associated with the use of this technology as representatives of the town of Fairfield. I also want to let you know that the town of Human Resources Department has written an updated draft cell phone policy, which will be distributed to all employees who are provided the privilege of possessing a town cell phone. Internal Audit and Human Resources are also working on a process of establishing a system of handling the separation of employees, which includes the handling of the return of town cell phones, credit cards, iPads, laptops, town vehicle and office keys, as well as the inactivation of employee passwords to town computer accounts and security codes to town buildings and offices. Do you have any questions?
I don't think any. Employees should not keep cell phones once they leave. care if they start paying for it themselves. There's a lot of reasons, which I won't get into now.
Well, especially if you have a policy and the policy says you must return it, you
Reason
should
why it should
follow the town policy. I agree.
I'm a municipal employee. I've been involved in situations where employee cell phones have had to be taken, scrubbed,
Yeah.
looked at for a variety of reasons, and just have to have them back. So anyway.
I think that's for all technology,
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean,
especially like laptops and
Right.
computers. Yeah, that's cars.
Yeah, well, two things. And I don't know if this is being looked at in the policy, but part of this for me is it's sort of similar to the credit card question where with that whole issue, we left it up to individual department heads to decide who should get a credit card. And am I wrong in assuming that here it's up to individual department heads to?
We're not wrong. Current policy allows the department head to decide who receives a town issued cell phone.
I'm gonna say I don't agree with that because what we saw with the credit cards was, first of all, every department had a different point of view. We had tons of unnecessary credit cards and we had abuses of the policy. So I'm not saying that I don't know if there's an issue here. But in this day and age, literally everyone, starting with fourth graders, has a personal cell phone. So I really have to wonder whether a town cell phone is necessary in all of these circumstances or not. And I think there should be a townwide policy that where we make a decision based on the need for that particular job. And I think that our, public safety, that's sort of a different thing, right? But I don't think that this should be up to department heads. That's my opinion. I think that we should, when we're looking at this policy, we should define a policy that's based on. The other thing that sort of caught my eye, again, one of these was like, just looking at the numbers here, primarily to police department, I get it, but like 7 cell phones in HR. I don't even think there's 7 people in the department. So who's getting, do we have part-timers or?
I believe at the time of audit, there was one part-time employee who had been issued a cell phone.
I think that when you see some of this stuff, to me, it calls into question the decisions that are being made about who should have one. I realize this is not a lot of money. It's $200,000 townwide per year. There's a lot bigger fish to fry, but I suspect that whatever is applicable to cell phones is probably similar to iPads and laptops and accessories and all sorts of other pieces of technology, which we ultimately spend a lot of money on. So I really do think there should be, as part of this, and I understand HR is looking at it, but there needs to be, as part of the policy, a designation of who needs a cell phone.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And for conversations with the Director of Human Resources, she did draft a new cell phone policy as a result of this audit. And part of the new draft policy does include a justification for eligibility of town cell phone, where there must be a justification for need for the employee.
But that's not a policy. Anybody could come up with that's my point. Like any department head could come up with a justification and I make a different decision than this person. I mean, job need, it should be defined. I mean, I would tend to think that again, most individuals, if you have a personal cell phone, 2 devices are a pain in the neck for one. I'm not really sure where that becomes absolutely necessary.
It becomes a FOIA thing, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Where all of a sudden you're using your personal cell phone for work. FOIA request and it.
But I would suspect that if people have a work device, they're probably using that for personal anyway, unless they happen to have 2
Probably doing
devices.
both, right?
Because people don't. I went through a period.
So there's no standardization and
No.
utilization. So
I went through a period of time having 2 devices and I couldn't stand it. I was always losing one, or finally I just,
So your argument would be that I mean, if you were to standardize it all, I'd say, well, then, okay, if we determine that everyone gets a cell phone, then everyone gets a cell phone. In the story, you want to talk about anything to do with work at all, we don't. But the lines are being blurred across the organization. I think that so then entire departments determine that they want everyone for the department. It's not just there's others doing similar. So there's a few moving parts with cell phone. This audit, obviously.
Yeah, again,
it's
it's not a lot of money, but I think it's probably a broader
But
issue.
even the management of it is something, so we're, the town for a really long time had everything centralized. And then they started breaking out, whether it was cost allocation breakouts or moving, not just cell phones, other things like divvying up invoices right from the vendors. That is something that uses some of the visibility. In some cases, it actually increases costs, and it also, in some cases, takes employees a significant amount of time to either process multiple things or allocate. Cell phones being one of them. One of the problems with cell phones right now is, would you like to see the town of Fairfield cell phone account? They're scattered throughout every single.
3 different vendors.
They're not centralized. It's a total mess. So even IT and handing a phone or not, was it IT or the example of, I went back to a department and sat in a drawer? Well, wait a minute, don't you turn your laptop and, other things in to IT, but not your cell phone, and do that at the department level? So we are looking towards, hopefully for this particular budget, to collapse some of those back and say, if you want visibility on the detail within a department on something, we can certainly go through and determine the users and give you that information. But to be managing this many different things and have them spread out the organization is not the one we end up in this.
Do you know what the Board of Ed policy is on cell phones?
No, but you can get that.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I have no idea. I mean, I assume they're not being handed out to teachers. Okay.
We got 2 more.
Okay,
All right.
well, I'll be.
Quick.
Well, solar invoices paid to ensure that the correct price per kilowatt hour billed on town invoices as designated in signed solar power purchase agreements are correct per solar location. There are 23 solar locations in town, not including Board of Ed, and the town was paying for solar usage on 21 locations at time of audit. Finding invoices approved for payment for 2 locations had errors in rates billed when compared to the rate schedules. One solar location agreement provided by the department did not possess the rate schedule in it. 2 power purchase agreements were not on file with Public Works Administration. The overpayment on invoices and solar rates did not agree with contractual rates on hand were deemed immaterial dollar value for under $100. Recommendation is recommended that the rate schedules for each solar location be cross-referenced to monthly bills for accuracy prior to payment. Internal audit follow-up. Internal audit obtained the missing power purchase agreements and rate schedule from the vendor and forwarded copies to the appropriate departments. Internal audit contacted the vendor and incorrect rates were adjusted by them and will be reflected on future invoices. Any questions?
Is it multiple, but so who's responsible for actually signing off on these solar invoices?
They come from, there's a recreation department signs off on one, DPW signs off on some, and let's see, recreation, DPW, and escapes my mind at this point, not the other.
Yeah,
Oh,
I don't want to
fire
belabor this.
department.
It's just once
believe
again,
fire
people
department.
approving things without knowing
Yes.
what they're supposed to be. I mean, the fact that we have to go to a vendor to get a rate sheet, then if you're the person signing off on this, what's your basis for approving an invoice without even knowing what we're supposed to be charged? It's just astonishing.
Yeah, it was fire department, public works, and
So I would say, again, I don't know if that's part of this, but I did read all these. to that, but yeah, and I think in all cases, I think what's important here is to make sure that there's a policy so that people who are approving these things know what they're supposed to be, looking for.
Last but not least, library revolving funds, checking account expenditures. Library had a checking account. Balance was $23,816 on June 30th, 2024. The funds in the account are generated from requests and gifts from donors, as well as revenue from library-sponsored fundraisers. The purpose was to ensure that expenditures made from the account are in accordance with written descriptions, designating how the monies are to be spent, and that they're evidenced by supporting documentation. Finding, it was noted that 2 outlays of money from the fund checking account can be construed as being on the fringe of typical fund expenditures for library needs or purposes. The sampled items were flowers and chocolates purchased for a board member, $62.57. Purpose was for a parting gift for the board member. 6 bottles of wine purchased with no explanation documented, $81.94. Annual meeting reception for the Board of Library Trustees.
Cheap wine.
It was. It was recommended that the library administration clearly define the parameters within which all library revolving funds may be expended. Library administration must ensure that all expenditures made with the fund monies are consistent with the adopted written requirements and restrictions designated by the list of authorized expenditures as approved. It was also noted that purchases of gift cards to local restaurants in the amount of $50 apiece were made. However, recipient names were not documented. Conversations with the library revealed that gift cards are awarded as participant prizes for library-sponsored programs. It was recommended that the names of the recipients of awarded gift cards purchased be recorded and attached to the backup related to the expense to support that all monies are properly accounted for and are distributed to appropriate recipients. Follow up, the town librarian has changed their gift giving policy to include a plaque rather than flowers and chocolates to more appropriately reflect their appreciation to party board members. The library has agreed with the audit recommendations. We'll follow them in the future. Any questions on that?
So this report went to the chair of the Board of Trustees, right?
Yes.
Yeah, one thing that, I mean, I don't know what the Board of Trustees looks at, but the detailed transaction list, I would think might be of interest to the
Yes,
board.
and
And
that-
I hope that they are getting that. It just, you know, it's always a
That was
sensitive
one of
thing.
my recommendations
Don't
also
yeah.
in the report that they did not receive that
Yeah.
detailed statement, and I felt that it would be beneficial to them, so they could see exactly who was paid, when they were paid,
Yeah, on an
dollar
ongoing
amount, what it
basis.
was for, you
Okay.
know, so they agreed. They thought that was a great idea, actually.
Connie, are there a lot of these funds left throughout the town, or is this like one of the sole remaining
I
ones?
think that this is the sole checking account maintained by a department. Yes, this is the only one at this time. The other ones
There
were
used to be
closed.
sunshine funds that we
Oh.
tried to get rid of at one time.
Well, there were petty
Petty
cash, the petty cash funds.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had one at Recreation that was closed. We had one at Fire Training Center that was also closed. And the money's returned back to the town.
And this fund doesn't include like what's supposed to go to the general fund,
No.
like for
No, it does
for
not.
like late fees and
Correct,
things
no.
like that. Okay.
It's strictly bequests and donations and other fundraisers. They call it the Friends of the Library. And have little programs, they put the money in the account. And then in closing, I just wanted to let you know that internal audit is now including Board of Education as part of regular audit reviews and examinations and per the request of the Audit Subcommittee. I recently completed an audit of the Board of Education payroll, and this report will be reviewed at our monthly internal audit group meeting with first selectman and department head next week, actually.
Excellent.
And I just finished another one, a Board of Education expended. Well, and yeah, just keep
Going.
on plugging away.
That's what you gotta
That's what we
do. Thank you. Any other questions?
No, just a request at our next meeting, I think if we can, it would be, I think, helpful to understand the audit plan for the rest of the year and what audits are being planned, and for the subcommittee to have some input on that, particularly Board of Ed, if you're gonna be spending time there. So, yeah, thank you.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second. Second.
Aye.
Aye.
You.
All right.
Thank you,
Connie, great
everyone, and
job.
thank you.
Recording stopped.